The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 in Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Spiro. Firearms deer season is now underway in Pennsylvania. Hunting is a tradition for many families here in the Susquehanna Valley. The State Game Commission expected more than 500,000 hunters to be in the woods yesterday, the first day of the season. More than 844,000 hunting licenses were sold in 2024. That number has remained pretty steady over the past couple of years. Of that 844,000, nearly 63,000 are junior hunters, ages 12 to 17, and nearly 30,000 are youth hunters, 11 and under. We'll be talking with the executive director of the Pennsylvania Game Commission about the sport of hunting and its impact on the economy in Pennsylvania. And we'll talk with a member of a local sportsman's group and a longtime hunter about the sport. We're putting hunting in Pennsylvania in focus. Joining us now is Steve Smith, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
The Game Commission goes way back, 130 years. Why was it established in Pennsylvania?
That's a great question. If you look back at that time period, there was really what we call a period of unregulated market hunting. And because of that, there weren't laws and regulations protecting wildlife populations. They could be harvested and over-harvested and sold, and that depleted the populations pretty significantly. So a group of concerned sportsmen and women lobbied the General Assembly to create the Pennsylvania Game Commission, specifically for the purpose of bringing back our wildlife populations in this state.
Why was that important?
Wildlife and our natural resources seem to be pretty ingrained in our culture in Pennsylvania. It's something that our citizens have always had a special connection to and attachment to. And like I said, it began with sportsmen and women who were concerned about what the future was going to look like due to unregulated hunting, that they lobbied to have the Game Commission created, protect wildlife, and create also places for wildlife populations to thrive. And that's what we have here today.
When you say wildlife, what are we talking about?
Well, we have over 480 species of wildlife in Pennsylvania as a whole. And of course, there's those that people associate with the Game Commission, deer probably being at the top of that list. Elk, bear, turkey are small game, squirrels, rabbits, grouse, 480 total, including songbirds, populations that are never hunted but still part of wildlife.
And Pennsylvania has a vast acreage of state game lands. How did that come about?
We absolutely do. We have in total about just over 1.5 million acres of game lands. And that's pretty incredible to have, particularly here in the Northeast, to have a state that has that much public land available. That came about as part of the creation of the Game Commission, was not only putting in place those laws and regulations to protect wildlife, but ultimately wildlife need places where they can go and be protected and sustain themselves. And that's what our game lands are for, is managing them for wildlife populations.
So they're not just for hunting, those game lands, or for other activities?
The primary purpose of our game lands is for creating habitat for wildlife to continue to thrive. And certainly on vast majority of our game lands are then open to hunting as well. That's part of how we manage wildlife. But if you look back, ultimately wildlife or game lands were created for places for wildlife to allow it to repopulate.
What are some of the do's and don'ts on the state game lands?
Well, there's restrictions. It depends on what you're doing in the time of year. And here we are in kind of the middle of our big game hunting seasons, particularly deer hunting season. So if you're on a game lands as a non-hunter, there's restrictions on what you can do. We require you to have 250 inches of orange on. And given that for safety concerns, and given again that game lands primarily are used for hunters during this time period. But other parts of the year outside of our main hunting seasons, particularly our firearm hunting seasons, game lands are used by a variety of outdoor recreationists, everything from hiking, mountain biking, to just wildlife watching. All that can take place on our game lands given the appropriate time of the year.
That's so interesting. They're really wonderful places in Pennsylvania, you know, in wooded areas that can really be a great place to just go and take a hike or a walk.
Absolutely. I mean, there's such a variety too. We have everything from sort of the traditional big woods areas of the state with the old growth forest to Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area, which is also owned by the Game Commission, where hundreds of thousands of people come each year to see the snow goose migrations. So, and everything in between.
You mentioned the wildlife population. How is that now overall?
Overall, we're very pleased with where, from a population standpoint, where our wildlife populations are, they seem to be thriving in those areas. Our hunting license numbers show that. We're very pleased with the number of hunters we have in Pennsylvania, which is a testament to the opportunities that they have to hunt the game species that we manage.
How many hunters do we have in Pennsylvania?
Approximately about 850,000, and that varies a little bit year to year, but over the past 5 years, we've been right around that 850,000 mark, which puts us second nationally in number of hunters and number of licenses sold.
Behind?
Texas.
All right.
Behind Texas.
But that has declined over the years, hasn't it?
It has. We reached a peak, not just in Pennsylvania, but nationally around that early 1980s time period. I think for us it was around 1982, 1983. We sold almost 1.3 million licenses. So we have come down significantly since then. There has been overall a slow, gradual decline in hunting. Again, not just in Pennsylvania, nationwide. If anything, in Pennsylvania, we've managed that storm, that decline, a lot better than several other states. And I, again, attribute that back to the amount of game lands that we have, the thriving wildlife populations, as well as just how deep ingrained the hunting culture is here in Pennsylvania.
But what do you attribute the decline to over the years?
I think there's a variety of factors that went into it. Certainly societal changes. In some areas, there's been a loss of huntable properties, as we've moved from sort of a rural agricultural society to more urban, suburban. I would attribute the loss of hunting to that, and as well as just different interest, more interest than ever before, competing for our time. So there's been a variety of factors that have led to that decline, but again, we've been pretty happy with where we are and how we've been able to maintain a consistent base of our hunters.
All right, well, hunting is still big business in Pennsylvania, and we'll talk about that when we come back.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're talking about hunting in Pennsylvania with Steve Smith, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Steve, you mentioned the decline in the number of hunters. What efforts have been made to get more young people, or I know to get women involved in hunting, that the Game Commission has made?
That's a great question. We've looked at primarily making hunting more accessible, providing more opportunities and making hunting more accessible. And that focus has been how we approach when we start seasons, to allow more individuals to participate. Also, we've very happy with what happened recently just this year to allow the authorization of hunting on Sundays. That certainly fits into what our strategy has been to stop that decline of hunting license numbers, to keep that solid hunting base that we need to manage wildlife. So it's been all about creating opportunities and making hunting more accessible.
That was certainly a bit of controversy, I guess, whether there would be hunting on Sundays in Pennsylvania or not. Why that change? How you say that has attracted other people can now go out on the first day of hunting when it's not a Monday?
And looking at Sunday hunting in particular, we've heard from years from hunters who've talked about how their time of field has been limited because of the law that prohibited Sunday hunting. So we were able to get that changed and really excited about what that's going to mean moving forward. Another thing that you referenced is that start of that firearms deer season. That's something that we at the Game Commission changed several years ago through our Board of Commissioners to start that season on a Saturday when traditionally it had started on a Monday. And it's in the same vein of just making it more accessible, providing more opportunities, particularly for those younger hunters, because we need them if the future of the sport of hunting is going to continue. So we know on a Monday during the weekday, there's lots of conflicts that can arise, be it school, be it work, be it family issues. So that's why the Game Commission, through our board, opened that season on a Saturday to try to, again, make hunting more accessible for more people.
I mentioned it's big business in Pennsylvania. What does it do for the economy?
It's been estimated that hunting contributes up to about $1.6 billion annually to Pennsylvania, which roughly also translates to about 15,000 jobs just through hunting. It turns out our hunters are very prolific when it comes to spending money. And it's everything.
You need all the equipment, the firearms, the ammunition.
Absolutely, and everything on top of that as well. Traveling, gas, meals, lodging. Some hunters lease property specifically to hunt on it, buy property, so they're paying taxes. So yeah, each hunter contributes roughly, again, about $1,000 individually in economic activity, which translates to about $1.6 billion annually.
Wow. What does a hunting license cost?
Now, a hunting license is typically the cheapest part of that. Our hunting license, our base hunting license fee is $20, and that hasn't changed since 1999. So our hunters are very fortunate that fee hasn't increased that cost has stayed stable for a significant period of time.
And one thing, not on this subject, but we've heard a lot about chronic wasting disease and how it has impacted the deer population in Pennsylvania. Is that still a problem?
It is. It's something that came to Pennsylvania about a decade ago. We monitor and test for it quite significantly because it has the ability to impact negatively deer populations over the long term. So we ask our hunters when going afield to see if they are going to be hunting in an area where CWD has been detected, and there's certain rules and regulations for hunting in those areas. But probably the most important thing they could do is submit that deer sample to be tested so that we can see to what extent the disease is continuing to spread.
And how should I be concerned about seeing deer in my rather suburban neighborhood, which I think everyone probably has had an encounter with at some point?
Yeah, deer have the ability to do that. They don't require that much as far as habitat to survive. So a small woodlot can be home to deer who then come out. And that shows the importance of what the Game Commission does and what our hunters do of managing those deer populations. Hunting is the method that we have in this state for managing deer populations. That's why we encourage our hunters in areas where maybe there's not a lot of public land, but to knock onto some doors to see if landowners will let them get onto those properties to help keep that deer population in check.
Obviously, you should ask before you
Absolutely.
before
Absolutely.
you do that. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
And what if you do encounter a deer, where it shouldn't be, or maybe it should be? I don't know.
Again, that's the benefit of our regulated hunting seasons, is trying to keep those impacts minimal. And that's where our hunters play a huge role.
And we've heard a lot of, it seems like more instances of people encountering bears, at least at this time of year, maybe.
Right, and our bear population is one that we also manage very actively every year. We look at what that harvest is. We look at what the population is doing as far as is it trending up or trending down, and then make season adjustments accordingly, because we want to have it. We certainly want to maintain that sustainable bear population that we do have and are so fortunate to have in Pennsylvania, but we want to manage it at a level where those conflicts that you referenced are at an acceptable amount.
Are you going out this season for deer season?
I will, absolutely. I'll be out.
What do you love about hunting?
Everything about it. It's something that I started doing as soon as I was legally able to. I remember anxiously waiting for that moment. It's a big part of my family traditions growing up. It's something I've been able to pass on in my family. And ultimately, it's how we fill our freezer every year as a household is through deer hunting.
Yep, we don't think about that it can be
a big part of it. It really is.
It's food for people too.
Absolutely.
Coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll talk with a hunter and a member of a sportsman's club.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're joined now by Ryan Bruner with the Northern Lancaster Game and Fish Protective Association. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
How does this association work?
So basically, we are a sportsman's club, for lack of a better term. We manage approximately 150 acres, and it's a membership-based organization. So our members, which we have over 700, pay about $50 a year, give or take, for membership and access to our property. Now that includes a rifle range. We also have monthly trap shoots for members and non-members. You can deer hunt on our property. We don't have any small game hunting opportunities because of some cooperations with the Game Commission and some of our managed fields. But we kind of operate as a sportsman's club with a couple different subcommittees.
Is that pretty typical for a sportsman's club to have that much acreage?
I think it's kind of unique for the area. I'm a member of a couple other sportsman's clubs, and they all typically have some acreage for whether it be hunting or rifle ranges or things like that. But we're lucky at Northern Lancaster Fish and Game that we have a pretty substantial tract of land. So.
That's great. How did you get into hunting?
So it's basically been a family affair. So my dad hunted, my uncles hunted, my great uncles hunted, my grandfathers hunted. So ever since I was 4 or 5 years old, I was kind of out in the field with them, not particularly hunting, but walking around in the snow, looking at tracks, watching animals. Growing up, I always had like little animal figurines. So it was always a passion of mine that was kind of instilled in me from my grandfather and my dad and my uncles. So yeah, it was basically just a family tradition that kind of got passed down to me, and I'm fortunate that it did.
What do you like about it?
I think a couple things. I would say probably, luckily for me, family is the number one thing. Especially during the Pennsylvania rifle season, it was a way for all my family to kind of gather together. Like my dad, my uncles, my great uncles, my grandfathers, they all kind of hunted together. And it was a way for them to kind of gather, share stories.
Kind of camaraderie,
Yeah,
right?
camaraderie, kind of like a little family camp atmosphere, even though we didn't actually have an actual camp. But everyone got together, shared stories, ate together, and I was kind of along for the ride from a young age. And then obviously I finally was able to hunt with them as well. So.
We heard from the Game Commission that the numbers have declined over the years of hunters in Pennsylvania, and it kind of skews a little older, but here you are in your late 20s and you're hunting. Do you find that friends of yours are still into it or not so much?
I do have a good group of friends that are still into it. I think part of the hunting atmosphere for the younger generation is kind of shifting more towards maybe the food aspect of things rather than just like going out there and hunting and just for like the pastime. I think kind of the field to table aspect of food and knowing where your food comes from and kind of controlling that process has been.
There's some buzz on social media about that, I guess, right?
It's kind of been trendy, for lack of a better term. So I think that might be gaining some traction, hopefully, in the younger people, that we might see some of that hunting license drop kind of pick up again in the future. So.
All right. Well, I know you do some of your own butchering, and we'll talk about that and the Share the Harvest program when we come back.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're talking with Ryan Bruner with the Northern Lancaster Game and Fish Protective Association and a longtime hunter. Ryan, you hunt and then you eat the venison, correct? And you also butcher some of it yourself?
Yes. So part of what I was talking about with kind of the field to table aspect is that you can control your food from start to finish. So once you harvest a deer, obviously you need to take care of it in certain ways to make sure that the meat is preserved. But then the process starts where you break that down similar to how you would break down a cow. And then you're able to, for relatively cheap, I would say, for an investment, you can purchase grinders or slicers and vacuum sealers as cheap as a couple $100, like from Cabela's or online. Amazon has them too. And you can control that process all the way through. So you can make your own hamburger, you can make your own steaks, you can vacuum seal that so it lasts up to 2-3 years if you have a good vacuum sealer. So,
wow, how did you learn to do that?
With the help of some of my friends in college, I really got more into it. And then it's kind of just like trial and error. You just kind of dive in. It's a learning experience, and you do the best you can, and eventually you get good at it.
And for those who don't want to go that far, there are a lot of deer processors
right, there's a lot
around
of
this area.
Deer processors in the area. A lot of local butcher shops do seasonal deer processing in the winter. So for those that don't want to get involved in that, or maybe they don't have the equipment or the space to handle processing their own deer, a lot of the butcher shops in the Lancaster, Berks County, Lebanon County area are really, really good. So.
Yeah. What is the Share the Harvest program?
So the Share the Harvest program really allows hunters to donate deer, and then that deer is used for local shelters or kitchens that distribute the deer to those people that are in need. So a lot of the butcher shops, and I believe there is a website that you can go on and get a list of butcher shops that participate. It allows you to donate a deer. They pay for the cost of the butcher shop or the butchering of that deer. And then it gets packaged mostly into ground meat, I believe, and then given to those people in need. So it's a good way for hunters that maybe shoot multiple deer a year. It's a good way for them to give back.
Of course, there's a lot of meat on a deer,
Of course,
right?
yeah. I mean, on an average sized deer, you can get 40, 50 pounds of meat off of that deer, which can feed a lot of people.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful program. And for those who are not familiar with venison or who haven't eaten it, you and your family like to eat it?
Absolutely, we eat it in a lot of things. So a very simple dish that is always a go-to for ground venison is venison spaghetti. So if you have ground meat in your spaghetti sauce, you can substitute that with deer instead of beef, and most people can't really tell the difference.
What do you like about venison?
I like it because it's lean. It's a healthy, I mean, I won't say it's healthier than beef, but it's a different type of meat. So you don't get all the fat. It's very lean and healthy meat, and I think that.
Do you think it has a gamey taste, or you just like it?
I've heard people say the gamey taste. I don't think that it's gamey. I think it's a little bit different consistency because it's so lean. So, but no, I wouldn't classify it as gamey if it's handled properly.
For those who have never hunted, what would you say if they might want to try it out?
I think it's good to try to get in touch with somebody that has hunted before and kind of take some knowledge from them, or kind of get into a mentorship position, because it can be overwhelming with all the gear and advertisements and everything you see on social media, but it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Or that expensive, because a lot
exactly.
of that stuff is expensive.
It can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. You can get into it with a hand-me-down rifle, or a rifle that one of your friends lets you borrow and you learn to shoot, which is another valuable skill to have, whether it be a bow hunt or a rifle hunt. It's a good skill to have.
And obviously safety is always a prime concern.
Of course, safety is number one, which is part of my recommendation of getting a mentor or someone that's done it before, rather than just diving into it and figuring things out on your own. Obviously, there's a lot of good things on social media, but there's also a lot of bad.
All right.
So
when will you be going out this season?
I'll be going out on opening day of rifle season, Saturday the 29th. So like I said earlier, my family and I will all be getting together, going to our tree stands, and hopefully we have some luck.
Are you okay with the change in Sunday hunting?
I am. I think, in my opinion, getting an extra day to hunt is always good for me. I work 5 days a week. Obviously, I'm not retired yet. So any extra day that I have to spend in the woods, I'll take it.
Any day hunting is a good day.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much, and good luck as you head out this season.
Thank you very much.
We talked about the effort to get more young people involved in hunting. A young man from Chester County who has hunted since he was a boy says he encourages his friends to hunt.
I like it because it created a bond between me and my father, and I hope to one day be able to teach my kids how to hunt. It's important to me because I feel like it controls a population of animals and things that are a nuisance to the area.
Hunter says young people interested in hunting should take a hunter safety course. Thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. And join me again next Sunday morning at 11 for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC's Meet the Press. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscasts, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.